dogs might be barking throughout this because I have people that are working on a part of my house, which is, of course, that happened today. But that's not uncommon for this show anyway.
We like dogs.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a dog. Okay, of course that happened today. We're up on YouTube. All right.
Hey,
Good.
YouTube.
What's up?
Good. Hey, YouTube.
Hey, YouTube. How's everybody doing? Good morning, comrades. This is going to be a show that we do that we're going to be talking about school return to schools. And who better to talk about schools than Kenzo Shibata? Kenzo is y'all remember the first time he was on, but just for those of you who might not have listened, who should go back and listen to our first episode with Kenzo back in April, I think it was. Kenzo is a teacher he is a teacher in Chicago. He's also a member of the Chicago Teachers Union. How you doing, Kenzo? And he's also the host of the Class Time podcast. As if you're watching, you can see that sweet mic guard he's got with Class Time on there. That's goals right there.
Yeah. Well, we are in like a holding pattern in Chicago now as far as what's going to happen in the fall. So yeah, I teach civics and Chicago history remotely for the past few months, and I imagine remotely again in the fall, like if we have any say so in it. And yeah, I've been teaching about 10 years. I took a break for a while and I worked for the Chicago Teachers Union and the Illinois Federation of Teachers. And I've been back in the classroom for the past 3 years. Executive board of CTU, and enjoying a pandemic summer right now.
Oh boy, yeah. So much fun just to sort of like never get to go out, never get to hang with people, maybe go to like a lot of people are going to isolated cabins, sort of like out in the woods. You know, that's sort of like the hot getaway for this summer, because I mean, you can't really go. I mean, people are going to the beaches, but that does not seem like a particularly safe thing to be doing right now.
In Chicago, it's ridiculous. Like, I mean, not that I think the beaches should be open, but our mayor close the beaches and then open the bars.
That's backwards though, right?
Which I don't get. And like our numbers are spiking again.
Yeah. Well, our governor just closed the bars about 2 weeks ago. So just so that to sort of set the stage, in Louisiana, we're number one. We are number one in per capita cases of COVID. And so, I mean, that is just like, it was so silly. The governor put out like almost like a banner, like an image that said "first in the nation for COVID per capita case." I'm like, why would you do this? Why would you like visual graphic for this? It was really, really strange. But that's sort of where we're at, and we basically have a very, very heavy push by the legislature and by our state level BESI board now, which is the basically state level school board of elementary and secondary education, that are basically putting forward these guidelines put forward by the superintendent, and passed a bill, which is now called Act 9, which essentially prevents it's immunity for school districts for if someone contracts COVID at school. Now, it was sort of amended to include some language about workers' comp and some other things, but like the proof has to be like, unless there's gross negligence, which is, I can't even know like how you would prove that. You know, like going back to school on its face seems like gross negligence to me.
Yeah, there's nothing close to what a school is that's legal to do right now. In our state. Like anything that, my school building, we have 850 people, and anywhere between 20 and 35 people in a room at a time. Like if it were any other kind of business, it'd be shut down.
Right, exactly.
But I don't know if it's a memo is going to come out at some point, I think, pointing out like how they stage this, because at least the way they rolled out reopening schools here in Chicago was there was just an onslaught of op-eds and messaging kind of from the wealthy and the connected about how important it is for school to start in the fall with
Oh
in-person
God,
learning.
they're doing the blitz.
And it was one of those things where, like, okay, you can't. I mean, how do you argue against that? Like, we all know that. We all know that there's no substitute for in-person learning. So, like, you put something out on social media, for example, saying, "Oh, this is BS. We don't want people to get hurt," and they'll say, "Don't you care about the kids?" Like, yes, that's why. They got kind of drowned out by like the need for schools to open, and then all of we all got this mosaic of different plans that that we're supposed to do in the fall for in-person learning. And now it just seems like people are like Fauci the other day was saying something along the lines of how we're basically guinea pigs. Like they went from at one point like, oh no, we have these plans, it's very safe, to like, well, we don't know, but you're doing this for the kids, right? And it was like it was just like a perfect media blitz.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a really strange formulation, because he said that was that something that he said at the AFT convention, or was that somewhere else? Because I know he was on a panel, and Randy Weingarten, the president of AFT, was like sort of celebrating the fact that we have Dr. Fauci coming on, and he's like, viewed as like the one resistance guy to Trump or whatever. And he's and basically like they're imbuing a guy with characteristics that he's not. I mean, he's a doctor who is telling facts for the most part. But that kind of framing is very questionable to me. Don't you think?
It is. And like, I don't know, AFT, the national, they have this really bad tendency, I feel, where they can't be measured. Like, okay, Fauci is probably one of the better people in the Trump White House right now. Doesn't mean he's a friggin' saint. It doesn't mean he's great. It's like,
he's certainly above criticism.
Exactly. And it's, well, I mean, I guess it's the same deal with Biden now, the way that he's pushing him. Like, there's no they can't do even like critical support where they're like, well, he's not the best. It's like they're trying to convince us he's going to be our savior.
It rings so untrue.
Yes.
And you know what's really interesting about that too, because I see that happen. And look, I am a member of AFT. I have been my entire teaching career. So are you. I mean, we're to our core. This is critique coming from a place of love, to be clear.
Yes.
At least from, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I assume that's the case. But anyway, we need to be able to, we cannot say these things to people and like sell them. Essentially, you're selling them a bill of goods. And when people realize that they're being sold a bill of goods, you have less credibility. When they're like, hey, wait a minute, we've been sold a bill of goods. This is not, you said it, this is a bunch of bullshit, So it's just really, I don't know. It doesn't help us to do that, even.
And like, I mean, I'm feeling very optimistically though about the AFT passing a resolution, basically approving opening, safety strikes, as they call it, if need be. I mean, like, I think I tweeted something about this. We don't need their permission, but at the same time, like, it's always a really good thing when the national isn't working against you.
Yeah. And we can marshal national level attention and resources around this kind of thing. This does open a lot of doors. I mean, you could have critiques of the timing of that release or the scope of it. But my sort of approach, and this is what I've been telling people, has been, you know what? Even if you're the most cynical person, which I might be, I try not to be, but even if you are the most cynical person, the most cynical take is that, oh, wow, they're trying to like cut off other more far-reaching resolutions that are in convention or whatever. Like, even with that, like take that, which is not one I believe, by the way, even if that is the case, then at least you can see that there is sufficient pressure to get this kind of a move by the national organization and by the leadership of the national organization. And that's not a bad thing. The gears are turning on this, and there is broad support for educators, among educators and with our parents and everything like that, to make sure that we do keep our kids safe. And we just need to spread that message, because the only way that we can keep our kids safe is by not returning to school for us on Monday. But for you, I'm not sure when that is. Kenzo, did we lose you? Kenzo, are you frozen? Did I freeze you with my powerful words? Oh boy. Oh boy. We lost him. We lost him. But anyway, I blew him off the internet. I can't believe it. I'm sorry, dude. But anyway, so my point is that it's not a bad thing that there is a potentially cynical approach that, I mean, I'm sorry, even if you look at this cynically, even if you look at the idea that AFT passed, the executive council passed this resolution to support safety strikes on an individual basis, then at least you see that this is something that has broad support. I'm going to try and get Kenzo back. Just give me one moment. I'm going to put some music on and we'll take a quick break.
No mail today, maybe tomorrow.
Ashanta.
All right, folks. So we are working on getting Kenzo back on the line. Sorry about the technical issue, but we are getting him back. He just had an issue with his connection on the internet. But just bear with us. It's going to be a-okay, and the conversation will continue. So I guess I could talk a little bit about the rally that I was just at today, and maybe we can show a little couple of clips from there, because it was something that we just left from. Oh, hey, Kenzo's back. I was just talking about no, it's okay. I was just talking about and we can get back to our conversation. The rally that we had today, I was going to show a couple of clips from there from a couple of the speakers. We had a rally at the administration building in Jefferson Parish. Myself and several organizers, my good friends, John Guzda, Marquisha Moore, and Anne-Marie Coviello. All of us sort of have been doing some organizing, sort of among ourselves and with parents. And we put together this demonstration that included parents, educators, bus drivers, which falls under the umbrella of educators, but we had a really fiery speech from a bus driver. Maybe we can sort of like look through a little bit of this video. It's very long. We have 51 minutes, but we can sort of like jump around a little bit to sample it, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
All right.
Wyatt.
So this is Dr. Ashanta Wyatt. She is a local community activist and a former administrator at West Jefferson High School.
Listen, this is quite simple for me.
Former guest of this show as well.
They can't do what you don't allow them to do to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple. There won't be any teaching if there are no teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you decide to go in and risk your life and die, or you decide to stand up and say, if you don't give us what we want, then we're going to have a national, teachers have to nationally say, enough is enough. If you don't go, there is nothing that they can do except bend to your will. The reason why these people think they control things is because we allow them to believe that they hold all the power. There won't be a school board if there are no teachers. There won't be a school board if you don't have students. And what you're asking what they're asking you guys to do is to risk your life so they can stand very safely on their virtual platforms and tell you what to do. Because if you're planning virtually, it's not time to go into a brick and mortar. And I would implore you to stand up.
You're gonna be talking to people.
And then have your students
Always on my
and their
bullshit.
families to stand up and support.
Oh, yeah, we had a board meeting recently where board members, it was virtual, and even so, oh no, I'm sorry, like it was virtual, but they were all in space together, but they were socially distanced. They couldn't even keep their masks on.
Yeah. Our board took their masks off during the school board meeting, like for entirely, which people wanted me to sort of point that out. I kind of didn't, like sort of when I did public comment, they wanted me to point that out, but I wasn't going to go there just because that might have sort of gone into a direction where it would have been a little bit off key for what I was saying, but it was very obvious and very visible. It just the nature of what I was saying didn't really fit that.
Someone brought it up in the Chicago board meeting because it was like they're going over the guidelines, and one of them was like expecting kindergartners to wear their masks the whole time, and someone was like, "You people are in your 50s and you can't do it."
Yeah, and plus, like I've already had like enough sort of fights with this school board.
Yeah,
it would have sort of been very easy to sort of pigeonhole me as being petty, like they always try to do. Yep. So I just didn't want to walk down that line. Somebody else doing that might have worked, but that coming from me would have been fairly easily dismissed. At least sort of it could have been, but I mean, I was walked out of a board meeting about 3 months ago, right before all this blew up by a police officer because I went over my 3 minutes. So I'm kind of spacing them out.
I got you. Yeah. There's a parent activist here that I want to say banned for life from
What?
Chicago board meetings because she was getting escorted out every single meeting. And like, yeah, I think she might still be banned. Her daughter is in college now. So I wonder if they just figured it's a wash or something.
Right. Or yeah. Or just wait until the next one comes through.
Yeah.
Here is next speaker is my friend. Well, this is John Goose making an announcement.
Today, this parent cannot. All right. Again, thank you, Dr. Wyatt. Our next speaker.
All right. So here's my friend Jenny Yanez. She is a local activist. She's a local. That's her giving me her keys. She's a local activist. She has a show on the radio station that our show's on.
Salam alaikum. Peace be upon you. Que la paz esté con vosotros. I have 2 children that have been through the Jefferson Parish school system. One graduated, one is still in the Jeff Parish school. It is a school that has a lot of privilege, I will admit that. He goes to one of the accelerated academies. I wanted to mention to y'all that 65% of the electorate in Jefferson Parish voted Republican. At the top of the Republican leadership, we know that they do not believe in masking because they have made very bold statements of appearing places publicly without masks. Are you ready?
Louis Gomer. Herman Cain died today because he didn't wear a mask a couple of months ago.
What was that?
Herman Cain.
Yeah. Oh yeah, him dying.
Yeah. You know, life can be a challenge. Life can seem impossible. It's never easy when there's so much on the line. You remember that?
Yeah.
The movie thing. Go ahead.
Herman Cain's death. I did not know how to react. I remember I like opened my phone up and it was Twitter or something. I saw it. And like I laughed, not because I thought it was funny, but because I didn't know how to react to it.
Yeah.
Because it was just kind of like, oh my God, that is just so on the nose. I mean, of course it's tragic when a person dies, but it's just he literally went to a Trump rally and that's why he's dead.
Yeah, that is sad. And also, like, at the same time, I'm just sort of like, man, this guy is so deeply despicable. To the point where I cannot help but sort of temper my sadness because, I mean, Herman Cain was the former president of the National Restaurant Association, the other NRA. They have basically been the lobby that has been keeping food workers wages below minimum wage, like tipped workers below minimum wage because of that particular lobbying. So I'm just like, oh, what a shame. You know, I mean, as somebody who worked in restaurants for longer than I've taught, I mean, I've worked service industry for over 10 years. I've gotten to teaching probably in my, late 20s, early 30s. I mean, it is just hard scrabble to be a server, especially at like little crappy restaurants like Applebee's or whatever, just because you don't make any money, and you just have to hustle.
And it's someone like him who, like, I don't know, there's so many lost wages you have because, he and his ilk wouldn't allow you to have like a regular minimum wage along with the tips. Not that that's the ideal solution, but it's more fair than having the tip to minimum wage, in my opinion.
Exactly. And like, again, like it is sad that an individual died of COVID, pain that he's experienced and all these things. I don't want to undersell that, but like you definitely it's hard to get that sad on a personal and also definitely an admittedly petty level.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I think part of the reason why I wanted to preface it by saying I felt a little bad because like my initial reaction was just laughter, and then I had to explain to my wife why I was laughing, and she looked at me like I was the devil. And I'm like, I'm not really laughing at it. I'm kind of laughing with the awful situation that we live our lives through every day. I have no other reaction to something so on the nose. Someone who like lived by capitalism and died by capitalism and was such an awful, awful human in promoting it. And
and one super last thing on that, and then we can stop talking over a woman, stop silencing Jenniana as my friend. But one of the things that really sort of that also makes me not so sad is that when you have these high profile, I mean, he ran for president a couple of years, like 2012 was it? He ran for president. And he's very high profile, very influential in the restaurant industry, and like he was like a Trump before Trump in a lot of ways. By showing that sort of like, I don't give a F, I'm not going to wear a mask. By doing that, you are encouraging all of the sort of people that follow you and follow this sort of like entire MAGA train, who are much more sympathetic, I find. Like individuals with less power, like poor working class people who just like buy the bullshit. I don't like it. I don't respect it, but I'm just sort of like, I feel really terrible for what you're doing to yourself and to others, right? You're taking this whole thing, and when they send that signal that we're saying screw you to wearing masks, and all this, this COVID thing is a hoax, and like entertaining all the QAnon stuff. You're encouraging other people to do that behavior, and as a result, you are responsible, in my view, for that, and for all of the pain and death and infection and all of the stuff that goes along with it. So again, tempered.
Yeah, and that's why I can't even get too mad at like individuals out there making the choice of not wearing a mask or not social distancing, because to go back, the topic at hand, like the state has been so all over the place. Like at first the reason why I don't have a beard now is because the CDC immediately said, oh, long beards are bad, and then like a couple months later they're like, no, they're fine, like, and then don't wear a mask, and then wear a mask. So like people who aren't super plugged into science and are just just want to live their lives, they're probably very confused, and I could see like wanting to take the path of least resistance. Like wearing a mask does kind of suck.
It sucks, but guess what? It protects you and it protects the other people. But you're right, 100%, and that gives people permission to sort of be like, y'all are all crazy cucks, or cucked by the mask. You're triggered because I don't have a mask, and all this other bullshit. Like it's almost like it makes me think about the people who like to roll coal. You know what I mean? You know what that is? When they just sort of like do whatever it is in the engine, so it like blasts up like this black smoke out of your truck or whatever. It's like they're rolling coal in real life, Anyway, that's at least the mindset that goes into it. Let's get back to this. We'll do maybe her and one more. I don't want to like talk about this the whole time, but I thought that she was really powerful, and then had a couple of students that I wanted to highlight. But there were like, check out my timeline on Facebook if I'm not your friend. I'm public. You can find it in the videos for everybody to see. Let's just do Jenny and then stop after that. Then we can sort of move on.
A mask, because she does not believe that helps her or her children. She may turn a blind eye to the child in the classroom who refuses to wear a mask because he hears his parents in the house say that this is a hoax, and that those that they believe do not wear masks themselves. Are you ready to send your child to a classroom that a teacher will turn a blind eye to that child who refuses to wear a mask when you have told your child to do so?
Hell no.
Tweeted that they may have to suspend elections in November because of fear of COVID, but they're gonna send your kindergartner to school. If you cannot protect yourself by pressing a button to vote for someone as a grown adult, what the hell do they think a 5-year-old's gonna do in the classroom?
Right.
They have politicized this, and they know that the schools is where most of Black and brown children are vulnerable.
Right. They don't care.
Now we know that our kids are already behind in the school system. This is not about going back to
to a system that's failing to educate our kids. This is about saving their lives while we collectively make a better future for them. We need to keep them alive, and then we deal with all those policies and we deal with the broken system. This is not the time to put our children as an experiment. The Petri dish started.
And you know, that speaks to the thing, and we were talking about this either, I can't remember if it was before we went on the air or before we before earlier in our conversation, but there's this language that has been rolled out that you and I have both seen, where these these school districts that are essentially taking all of the agency and the direct ability to like the people who want broad like out of the box curriculum. They're now saying that the educator, I mean, Betsy DeVos just said this herself. They're saying that educators are essentially not working and operating in the interests of our children. They're being, it's the selfish teacher bullshit. When we're actually pushing at the best of times, and this is certainly not the best of times, we're pushing for an education system that is empowering to educators and that can actually provide justice, as opposed to this sort of across the board, out of the box BS. And now they're using the fact that we're not going to endanger their lives as another similar, like, bad teachers, they're against your kids or whatever. They're using that excuse to say that we're like preventing their learning or whatever. And it's just so unbelievably disgusting to me. Like that whole like rhetoric rollout is just absolutely irreprehensible to me. And
yeah, especially, I mean, they keep like kind of insinuating that we're lazy, and that's why we want to do the distance learning. But like, it was in my experience, it was more work and less reward doing the distance learning. I was working 10, 12-hour days because I was doing this for the first time. And then, realistically, having less than half maybe a quarter participation from my students. And not that participation is the most important thing, as far as like turning in assignments, but the reality is it is more work, and you're not getting that reward of actually connecting with students every day in always in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and I almost want to reframe the entire like working from home side of it, because like it's more like, instead of working from home, it's like you're living at work.
Yes, that is so true.
Like you're always kind of on. If somebody, like a parent, emails you, or I teach special ed, sometimes I'll give my number to a parent so they can text me or whatever. It's not often, but I would usually do it through the Google Voice number that we had set up. That's attached to my school account. Like it definitely was through the right lines. But anyway, and by the way, Google's got all my information. Contact. Let's not get into that part. But yeah, you're being asked to do more than ever, and then educators are saying we want to do that.
Yes,
as opposed to go into this situation where we know more people are going to be contracting coronavirus and potentially dying. So it's a really like bad, and I hate to say that somebody's acting in bad faith most of the time, but like this is a very clear situation that's the case. You know what I mean? Like I try to give benefits of the doubt to a very, very, very liberal extent, but like, you can't do it. Cannot do it.
What really irks me in Chicago, and I'm sure like other districts have the same situation, is our union leaders immediately reached out to the district and said, hey, let's work on a distance plan for the fall. It didn't even necessarily have to be the be all end all final plan, but like if we had teachers and students and parents and everyone together from May, June, working on this plan through August, I think we'd have a hell of a distance learning plan. We would, we'd all put our heads together. We'd all figure out with our expertise what works. And like, we would even pay mind to the district when they talk about budget constraints or whatever. So they would have their say. we have this situation we keep talking about here where like we keep offering the mayor wins and she refuses to take them. And like that was one of those. And like we could have had this amazing plan, and instead we have, you know, at least, you know, the school doors are opening to teachers in about 4 weeks, you know, theoretically. And now we have this plan slapped, you know, in front of us that's assume certain things, like we can keep kids in pods of 15 where they're not going to interact outside of those pods of 15 even during recess.
And who watches them the entire time? Like, are you just going to be assigned to tied to those 15 kids for their entire day? Like, when do you get a break? When do you get your 30 minutes? When do you get your planning? Any of that stuff. Like, is that even a part of this deal, or do they just own you when you're at school?
There's so many. The plan has more question marks than answers. You know, one of the things for me is I teach in 11th and 12th grade, and they say that 11th and 12th graders, to alleviate, you know, the size of you know, just the sheer amount of humans in the high schools, 11th and 12th would be 100% distance. And, you know, my wife is immunocompromised. So I'm like, okay, this could work out for me, even though I don't agree with reopening schools. Like I could work from home. And then the district, from what I understand, is saying that, you know, 11th and 12th grade teachers then are going to be giving distance learning lessons from our schools. Which doesn't make any sense. We can't all live stream at the same time from our schools. We don't have that capacity.
Being just totally throttled, right?
Yes, there's that, and then there's just, I know, just knowing this district, I know what this means. This means that like if a teacher is out and they look in your classroom, they're like, "Oh, how many kids are in your virtual classroom? Oh, no one showed up today. Well, you're going to cover this class then."
That's ridiculous too. Yeah. and that, I mean, you know it because that's what already happened before the pandemic and the disaster and all these changes. So like, why would it be different? You know, why would you expect it to be different? When do you expect the substitute situation to be any better in the middle of a pandemic than it was before it? Like, no, of course not. They're not. So, and again, we couldn't get subs because we don't pay subs, and like it's all contracted out to Kelly Services, and like no, there's no, like, you need to put in like 2 weeks ahead of time a lot of times to get a sub, and sometimes that doesn't even make it, you know, make it happen. You know, it's one of these sorts of things. No, there's no way. There's no way that would fly out. And plus, and this is something that we keep, I mean, at least in the plan that they had that I've been asking this I asked these same exact questions at state committee, Senate committee meetings of education, at the Bessie board meeting, where they sort of like passed this entire set of guidelines from the state. And then at my local school board, because they basically like set like very, very, very like below the CDC's standards guidelines, even though they say they were informed by the CDC, guidelines by the state, and essentially delegated parishes, each school district in each parish or each charter network school district as well, to come up with their own plan based off of these guidelines. And then now what's ended up happening, and the state superintendent came from my district, and I make sure to always say, hey, it's my old friend. But essentially, the state level guidelines were written. They're not good and they're not sufficient. It was passed to the districts. They just basically copy paste the same exact guidelines as the plan, and it's not sufficient. And then essentially, who's going to be charged with implementing this very sort of like nebulously worded plan where they don't have specific like responsibilities and liabilities or whatever? They essentially said, hey, we have 83 schools in the school district. Y'all figure it out at the school level. So it's just the shit. So essentially, you take a piece of glass, you smash it into 68 pieces, right? And then you take one of those pieces and you smash it into 82 even smaller pieces.
Yeah, none of it makes sense.
Yeah. Let's do this one last one. This is a bus driver fella. I think my video cut out in the middle of it, but let's give it one. Let's do a couple of minutes of this because I thought he was really awesome, and then we can sort of push forward.
For Everett.
This is Everett.
All right, Everett.
Wheels on the bus.
All right, we're gonna talk about what Dr. Paul just said about experiment. He said, we go back in the classroom, it's going to be an experiment.
Yeah.
They want to know
Another
how
experiment.
kids can affect themselves in a confined compartment.
I respect his Zion Williamson shirt too.
They say in phase 2, 50% capacity. For y'all that don't know, most buses are 65 capacity buses, which means that's half. 33 kids on a bus, they're saying 25 with the teacher in the classroom. And that's too many. So how are we going to drive with 33 kids on a bus and make sure they got their masks on and we have no one on the bus with us? We by ourselves.
Can't be done.
We are y'all first line of defense. We're the first one to come in contact with the kids. It's just like if you look at your watch with a second hand, that's us. If the second hand don't move, don't nothing go. You understand? So the reason I bring that up is because look, they're telling us we can't do temperature checks. Really? So we're gonna bring y'all the COVID to the school.
Yeah, you brought. Yeah.
We're gonna expose ourselves and bring it to y'all. They said to be safe, we'll leave the windows down. Really?
Oh.
Do y'all imagine the air coming in the bus from all different sides? What it's gonna do for a kid pull his mask off to talk to another kid?
Yeah.
The COVID is spread all through the bus.
That's right.
And that's the best y'all can do for us, put the windows down?
That's right.
There's no way in the world we can drive these kids safely.
No.
And if we can't,
Yeah, what if it rains?
I mean, we can't check temperatures. You know, what happened if a kid is at the stop? They said no kid left behind. They said we can't leave a kid at the bus stop. But if a kid don't have a mask, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I got to tell a kid you can't get on this bus, but then they're gonna tell me I can lose my job.
That's right.
But I'm a guy,
Right.
so I got a choice to make. So I mean, if we can't keep the kids safe, and we can't keep the driver safe, we sure can't keep the teachers safe.
Right.
This is a fight that all of us have to fight.
Amen.
This ain't just the teachers fight.
Amen.
This is everybody's fight.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Everybody's fight. And we need to come together and we need to, just like the young lady said, there is power in numbers.
Yeah, you're right.
They cannot fire all of y'all at one time.
They can't fire all of
You
them.
understand? And if y'all say no, they're gonna have to go in there and find another way to do this.
Yeah.
And if it means staying at home and teaching on the computer, then that's what you got to do.
Yes, sir.
Because
Yes, sir.
our lives matter.
Yes, they do.
All lives. And to make sure that all lives are stay alive is we gonna have to stay out of them schools.
Yeah, he was amazing. And like it was just a really, really awesome day. And I was so thrilled with all of the folks that showed up. And like just you get that high after like one of these big sort of successful actions that happen,
He's got, brings up a really good point too, is that kids act so differently on the bus than they do in the classroom. And, I mean, there's only so much that the driver can see, and without an aid, there's no way.
Yeah. And like I said before, we lead the nation right now in per capita cases of COVID. And they're trying to, like, you should not be considering going to school at all. Like virtual is the only option. And Jefferson Parish, where I work, has basically decided like that we're going to be the sore thumb that stands out when Orleans Parish, which is right next door, shut down. St. Tammany Parish, which is where David Duke is from, they closed down. Like all these like really sort of conservative areas, essentially. I mean, Orleans isn't, but like surrounding parishes, Caddo all the way out, basically Bible Belt, Texas. I mean, I got a lot of respect for the union. Shout out to Red River United, basically like an amalgamation of locals out there. But they were able to even push back a start of school until until at least after Labor Day. I mean, we have an early return, and Jefferson Parish, the parish that I'm in, is sort of like rolled out this. Oh, we have three options. We have a virtual option, we have a hybrid option, or we have an in-person option. So this is more, you know what it is? It's more fucking school choice. What it is. It's more school choice.
Well, we're doing hybrid in Chicago, but like parents can opt out for 100% virtual still. But there's no plan for who's going to be teaching them virtually. And also, like, are the kids still going to be on the same kind of curricular timeline as the kids doing distance? That hasn't been answered.
Who's gonna teach them?
What's that?
Who's going to teach them? Yeah.
It hasn't been determined. And then like the hybrid model is funny too, because it makes nobody happy, because the kids are still in school 4 days a week and then they alternate. So like parents aren't getting a break to go to work.
It's the worst of both worlds.
Yes. No one is going to be happy.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, yeah. So it's really, really wild, because like we have just this poisoned mentality, and that kind of like goes along with this sort of like and it's really pernicious, I think, because like when you say, and this is exactly how the school reform movement, the charter thing, school choice, whatever, how it works is it sort of like tricks you into feeling empowered by saying, well, I have some options here and I'm not being forced anything by the big government, the big federal government trying to make me do whatever. And I don't mean like I don't want to be told by the government what to do, like directly. I understand that impulse. However, if you have nothing but terrible options, then basically who gives a shit if you're picking? Who cares? Like the only reason that the virtual is good is that everybody does it, so nobody goes back to school, because we don't want the pandemic to spread. We don't want our kids and our families and ourselves. I don't want to get COVID. We don't want that to happen. And like the virtual option doesn't stop. I mean, the virtual option alone is the only thing that stops it. Like a hybrid, you'll still get large groups of people back together, and you will not be able to control those. It's impossible. Look, I'm a pretty damn good classroom manager, I think. I'm definitely a little bit loose on stuff. It's just how it is. That's how me and the kids have an understanding. However, like nobody, not the best classroom, Harry Wong or whatever, like go for it. Write your book, write your first days of school during COVID, dude.
That I would love to see that. And then like, even if you are a teacher who is like a little more strict, like what are you gonna do? A kid takes off his or her mask, give them a detention. Okay, fine, they're in detention, but they already exposed the class. It's a zero-sum thing. It's not like, well, next time they'll know not to take that mask off.
And even if that did work, like that's just more detentions, more suspensions, school to prison pipeline.
And just like school to prison, like it will be housing a bunch of kids that could be infecting each other even more.
Exactly. And when they've already proven that they'll be the ones that are the most likely to take off their mask, you just concentrate them all together. Good idea.
So I don't know what you do.
There's no way that it can work out. Like this, the idea that we're considering this at this point, and like I said, we go back on Monday, teachers do, kids go back on the 12th. The idea that we would considering even going back instead of getting training and resources for distance learning is so insane to me. Like we are wasting our time, and basically the only thing so they basically like put us on this railroad, right? We're on the tracks and there's no switch ahead. Like the switch just passed us by behind. So the only way to stop the train from coming off the cliff is to knock it off the rails. There's no switch. I don't know, or pull the brake, I suppose. And that's what's going to happen, because we could have started like a full virtual option, or not option, a virtual program on the 12th. And sorry, I'm very ranty right now, so sorry about that.
No worries.
We could have started that if we had been sort of like gearing towards that and moving in that direction and creating that infrastructure the entire time. And like teachers would be able to prepare for that. However, since we've just bumbled along all the way and like, oh shit, we got to go back to school on Monday, then the only thing you can do is push back, because there's no way we can switch that quickly. No way in a million years.
Who's in charge? I keep thinking that. I can't tell who's in charge. The one thing that did give me some hope is the fact that Trump DeVos, at least here, is because of Trump DeVos being so insistent upon schools opening that we have a mayor who only seems to care about not being like Trump.
Yeah, hashtag resist.
And like everyone, she's called all of the BLM protesters compared us to Trumpish in the past too. Like anyone that's against her is like Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great. Just to find yourself as an opposition to something. Well, what happens then when Trump's like close the schools or whatever? What happens if he does that? I mean, I'm not necessarily suspecting that he does. If you're gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna be like him. Let's open the schools.
like Looney Tunes.
Yeah, exactly. Like rabbit season, duck season.
Yeah, I know. None of the teachers I'm talking to right now are like thinking this is going to happen. Like us actually having in person on the first day.
Mm-hmm. So what's the vibe? I mean, have you been talking to folks in Chicago? What's the sort of thought? I mean, you mentioned the possibility and nobody's announced anything. You're not like claiming or speaking on behalf of anybody, but like, what's the sort of like vibe of people in terms of a job action, like a sick out or a strike or something?
I mean, I think there's an appetite for it. Like we struck not too long ago, just last school year. And for a lot of, what was that?
We met in October. That's when we met one another.
That's right. Yeah. That's when you came out to Chicago to support the strike. And that the vibe is kind of like no one wants to go on strike again, but it just the plan itself is a non-starter for everyone I've talked to, parents alike. Mm-hmm. I just had the head of a parent group raise your hand on class time recently, and they did a survey of the parents, and the parents are also like, there's no reason. Some parents are actually almost in competition for how much they're avoiding school in the fall. Like you'll see in a parent group like, well, I'm not sending my kid. Well, I'm not sending my kid either. Well, I'm also not going to send my kid. And it would start with like, well, maybe I'll do the hybrid, and then it's like, no. And then there's also the plan changes. Mm-hmm. Like at one point they were saying, okay, we're going with the hybrid model, and now they're looking at new cases. And if the new cases hit a certain threshold, then they're going to go 100% to virtual. They said temporarily, like they'll never say for the year or for a certain amount of time. So I'm wondering if the district is gearing up for it, but they don't want to seem like their hand is being forced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, this was our decision. We didn't do it because we were pressured. We did it because we wanted to. We decided, and nobody can pressure us. Yeah.
And our mayor sends her kid to a private school, so like that, she doesn't have skin in the game. Mm-hmm. She never does when it comes to the school. So I don't even think that she's going to have like a visceral change of heart at the end. I think it's going to be a political decision, and I think the goal, the task at hand now for us for the next few weeks, parents, teachers, and the like, is basically to put on a united front and say, this plan is a non-starter. We have to work together on this too. We can't be in opposition doing this plan, because then the kids won't get the resources. It'll be none of us want this to fail. We want this to be
of course,
I don't want to say successful, but as little unsuccess as possible, I should say, because we know that in person there's no substitute for in person, but we want to like do as best as we can with virtual.
Yeah, and like that's the whole thing. Like, you don't want the disaster to happen to yourself, to your kid, or to anybody else. That's not what we want here. And like when people like the senator in Louisiana, John Kennedy, says we can kiss his ass, whatever, because we're just trying to like make hay over this or whatever, then like he's definitely like sending a very clear signal that he doesn't give a shit about what we actually want or care about. Period. I don't know. I hate that guy. That dude's I hate him so much.
I'm wondering if there's always going to be a war on teachers, that we're just going to have to constantly fight, or if eventually people will be like, let's fight someone else for a while.
Yeah. Like the class war would sort of like just reorient. I think that would only happen if they lose. If you know what I mean, like if, because one thing that we know about sort of like capitalist mindset is when it costs too much to continue this fight, they'll fold, they'll hold their hand, and they'll go find somewhere where there's more opportunity to spend more money to make money.
Yes.
So if we can make it unprofitable for capitalists to like have their attention and like throw all these resources at education, because they wouldn't be throwing these resources at education if they didn't get money on the back end, right? If we can make that happen, then they'll stop, and they'll pick some other poor profession that we should stand in solidarity with, by the way, to fight with, to fuck with. That's my prediction, and I don't know what it would be, but that's sort of the thought that I have.
Seems like a lot of the big philanthropists or philanthropreneurs, whatever you want to call them, they are shifting kind of to COVID now and like trying to figure out how to get cash out of this disaster, this tragedy.
Yeah, I think that's more of a define the portfolio sort of thing.
Gotcha.
Bill Gates has like always been doing his bullshit with bullshit. Yeah, let's bullshit. Like sort of colonial like aid to try and get like malaria taken care of in Haiti or something like that. Doing what he's doing is sort of like purchasing parts of Haiti and essentially buying influence in the area and with the government. I mean, that's what he's doing. And same he's done with education, even though he himself admitted that his approach to teacher evaluation specifically has been an abject failure and spent it's like wasted billions of dollars, both his own and taxpayer money.
Ruined people's lives.
Ruined an entire like teaching like could and would be much more fun and much much better at it. And I mean, I don't want to get into this, but I do have a theory, but we can talk about this later. Essentially, it would be a better, safer profession to teach, and much more well respected for real, and not in the patronizing way, not in like it's Teacher Appreciation Week. Here's a peanut or a Kit Kat or whatever. To which some people are being genuine, but to a large part, especially when it comes from administration and politicians, it's like, oh wow, you're just virtue signaling here. But if they didn't have this sort of like focus on like, oh, we need to have great teachers in every classroom or whatever, which no shit, dude. Like, but like that, it would be so much better to be a teacher. It would be less miserable. It would be more fun. You would have more of an ability to have your impact on what you're teaching, even though you already definitely do, because you have relationships with all of your students. It's just, it would be less miserable the entire time.
Definitely. I mean, 2003 was the first year I taught, and it's gotten so demonstrably worse since then. Like things weren't great then. Like I just remember I didn't have any resources, but I also didn't really have administrators popping in the room and bothering my students while I'm trying to teach. That wasn't a thing. Evaluation was pretty simple, and you weren't expected to like film yourself teaching and jumping through all these extra hoops. Like it was more fun, and there was more space you had to be creative in it. And now there's more and more like hoops you have to jump through to still do the cool creative stuff. But then like, maybe once a week you have to put on a show for some administrator. That wasn't like that 15 years ago.
And it's funny too, because that whole thing is bullshit. But like, are you familiar with, these are sort of like two different discrete things, the concept of A, management by walking around, because that's what that is, and B, the concept of Taylorism in American sort of like industrial history. You're familiar with those two concepts? Like
yes.
Breaking down jobs, and the assembly line is a part of this, but breaking down jobs to maximize efficiency so that anybody can do any small part of this job, and sort of like breaking it down into components and judging people based off of that, right?
And then it's also like it increases the alienation
Yeah.
in there because you're hyper focused on these things that like discreetly don't seem to be that important.
Right. And then at the same exact time, like the idea of management by walking around is essentially a boss just like popping into like different parts of the floor of wherever they're at and just say like, hey, what's going on over here? You know, like that kind of thing. You know, like that's like the other sort of component that's at play here. I find sort of like this, the idea that you can do either of those things in like a scientific way, and then and then the standards thing sort of falls into that point too, right? That's scientifically proving that this kid learned X, you know, and didn't learn Y. You know, it's just trying to turn something that is that is not measurable, not quantifiable, like qualitative and as abstract as you can possibly have, and try and make like put numbers on it and create. And that's where you get shit like VAM, you know.
And just like I just think about like when I was a student, like I was kind of a space case, and you know, at any given time. And if an administrator I could be in the classroom of my favorite teacher, who's a great teacher, and if they just happen to catch me at a certain time and said, "Hey, Kenzo, what are you learning about?" Stuff.
Girls. Recess.
I'm 16. I'm thinking about girls, or you know, I'm drawing this band logo like right now. The teacher's great. I love the teacher, but like my brain is focused on like what it wants to focus on right now.
I need a minute, you know. I need to take a little break, and like this guy's talking about stuff I don't care about. You know, it's not a judgment on him or her or them, but I'm just sort of like, I'm not paying attention. Sorry.
Or like I was focused until you asked me, and now I'm not sure what's going on.
That is the best answer. And actually, you know what? We should probably just train kids to say that. I'm trying to learn here. Like, he's talking. Why are you interrupting? I was paying attention until you started talking to me. That would be awesome. I don't know. So I guess we can sort of like, I'm glad to hear that all of the that there is a lot of pushback on the approach in Chicago of plans or whatever plans in Chicago. So today I learned that there is much more support behind not returning to school locally, and it's one of those sort of situations, and you probably have experienced this too. Even when, especially because online is such like an alienating space. Even if you see people agreeing with you online, there is nothing like, you still always think that you're the crazy one when you're in like a real like meat space situation. You're the crazy, either you're the crazy one or everybody else is crazy. You know what I mean? And when you have a large group of people coming together to rally around and fight for the same things that you care about, and you see that more people care about them, there is nothing more affirming and validating than that. It is just such a beautiful thing to see this sort of like broad solidarity, and you don't feel crazy for like 5 minutes in your life. You know,
that happens every time there's some sort of action in CTU. Is like, at first people are very nervous, and then you look around and you see how much support there is. And like, you know, 2012, 2019, you know, that was something I heard a lot from teachers. I had no idea the public liked us so much. And I think part of it too is like, we look at editorial pages and we think that as actually the voice of the people. And I know I get nervous sometimes when they're on some real BS on the Tribune editorial page. Like, oh, the public is going to read this and they're going to believe it. But people aren't reading the papers. Like, it's a contradictory thing I think we have in our heads, where like the mainstream papers can have such an impact, but at the same time we know they're dying.
Yeah. And yeah, so if you're getting your sense, I mean, like, it definitely does tell you something. Like, it tells you something that somebody thinks that, like, if they wrote like a letter to the editor or something, then the editor's like, oh, let's run this. That sounds good.
Oh, well, if it's the op-ed, we know it's like, it's our local ruling class. That's going to be their line, you know, in a day.
Yeah, for sure. And so but yeah, even like somebody, exactly. Yeah, that's 100% right. But yeah, nobody's, so essentially what they're thinking, but that doesn't tell you anything about like what most people thinking. You don't know, I mean, it might be, but you don't know how influential it is. If and you don't just go around talking about, maybe some people do, but most people don't. Did you read that article by this famous columnist in the paper, in the Tribune or whatever, or in the Times? Because that's not really something that people do these days. It's more, did you hear that podcast? Did you watch that YouTube video? Did you see that meme or whatever? Like one of the funny things, okay, we can wrap it up. But one of those funny things one of the most popular people on the internet amongst like regular teachers that I find is like that Eddie B comedy guy. Just like rapid fire kind of like silly jokes, and like teachers freaking love it, and that's the thing, like that's what people are paying attention to. And
that was something that floored me when I first got back into teaching about 2.5 years ago, was that kids don't watch TV at all. Like I would make references to things and they're like, we don't watch that. I'm like, what do you watch? YouTube. So that was one of those icebreaker things. Not what is your favorite TV show? It's like, what are you watching on YouTube? And immediately that starts conversations with kids. They'll be like, oh, I watch that channel. That person's bogus. And like, then an actual conversation happens instead of trying to force or something.
Or like just, or you can even, and I know you got to go, but like just to sort of wrap up on this, like you can even just say, like when they're talking about like Fortnite or whatever, and it's just like, well, you know what? I don't play Fortnite and I don't pretend to, but I'm glad that you enjoy playing it. You know what I mean? And I think there is sort of like at least they understand that you're not BSing them. That's how it is for me. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today, Kenzo. I know you got to go.
Thanks for having me on. I'm sorry about the technical difficulty there.
We'll figure it out and we'll edit it in post, but we should probably have this show dropping probably before the weekend. We had a short episode go out yesterday, but we're going to just drop this one on the podcast feed. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and man, solidarity from New Orleans and Jefferson Parish, and wearing the CTU shirt that I got. Will gave me this when I went up there. They were like him and Abby were great hosts up there, and the good boy Marvin let us crash at his place.
Oh, Marvin's the best.
So thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Take care, Jeff.
Bye.
All right, peace.
You can listen to Good Morning Comrade every Tuesday on WHIV FM. We also have releases on Thursday on our feed, goodmorningcomrade.com. You can get more information about all of our stuff, patreon.com/goodmorningcomrade, where you can support our show. You can give us money. We are exploring getting those koozies done. I know I've been saying it for a very long time, but we're going to do it. I promise. We have the contact for the union printer. This will be 100% union made. And we're checking out logos and prices. If you want to submit an idea for a logo, drop us a line. You can hit us at Comrade Morning on Twitter. You can hit me on Twitter at Eminent Prof. You can email us contact@goodmorningcomrade.com. But please do help us make this show something that's sustainable, so that we can expand our horizons, upgrade the equipment, sound really good, and keep the GMC content train a rolling. Woo woo. You can follow me, like I said before, on Twitter at Eminent Prof. Follow the show on Twitter at Comrade Morning. And that's pretty much it. GoodMorningComrade.com. Love you, everyone. Bye.